All right, so a couple other examples of applications for classical conditioning. One is with advertising. So advertisers pair their products with ideas or things that we naturally respond to. And so they might pair their products with this idea of sex appeal or like an idea about being really cool. And those things are something we naturally respond to. And so they pair their products with them, and then we become classically conditioned to really like or want milk or Camel Lights. And so, advertising is one example of classical conditioning in our everyday lives. Another application is this example of a drug treatment for alcoholism. So, this drug is called Antabuse, and it makes you feel nauseous when you drink alcohol. So, the idea is that if people with alcoholism take this medication, every time they drink, they'll feel really nauseous and sick. And so, eventually, hopefully, they will associate drinking alcohol with being sick, and then they'll stop drinking, or they'll not want to drink. And so that's an example of using classical conditioning to try to treat alcoholism. Okay, so let's go through some examples. You'll just have to do this on your own. So just kind of play along as I go through it. And so I'm going to read these examples, and then I'll present something, a part of this example, and you'll tell me if it's A, the unconditioned stimulus, B, the unconditioned response, C, the conditioned response, or C, the conditioned stimulus, or D, the conditioned response. Okay, in this example, you get sick on a roller coaster right after eating cotton candy. Now, the smell or sight of cotton candy makes you ill. In this example, what is the cotton candy? So think about this. Is it A, B, C, or D? Okay, the answer is the conditioned stimulus. Okay, in this example, what is the roller coaster? The roller coaster is A, it's the unconditioned stimulus. And so this makes you sick automatically without any learning. Okay, so what is getting sick from the roller coaster? That is B, the unconditioned response, because again, this is your natural response that doesn't require any learning. And then what is getting sick from cotton candy? So now the smell or sight of cotton candy makes you ill. So this is D, the conditioned response. And so this is that learned response. Okay, one more example. You have a crush on someone in one of your classes. You feel really happy whenever you see them inside the classroom. Now, when you walk by the classroom randomly, you feel a rush of happiness. In this example, what is the crush? The answer is A, the unconditioned stimulus, because it produces the response naturally without any conditioning. What is feeling happy from your crush? The answer is B, the unconditioned response, because it requires no learning. And then what is the classroom? In this example, it is C, the conditioned response. And so after you've been conditioned, you learn to feel happy when you walk by the classroom. Okay, so in these examples, and just throughout this lecture, I've demonstrated how classical conditioning can explain a variety of behaviors and responses. And as you go about through your life, I want you to try to notice, you might notice classical conditioning in your life or in other people's lives around you. So try to pay attention to that and see if you can pick out instances of classical conditioning in your own life. But I want to say that learning is more than just simply ringing a bell and making a dog salivate. So one thing that's common across all of these different examples is that we've seen is that the behavior is involuntary. So The classical conditioning explains how we react to certain stimuli. But our behavior isn't just always a response to different stimuli that we're exposed to. So much of our behavior is voluntary and on purpose. And so what we've covered so far, this type of learning is really automatic and involuntary. It just happens through associations that you encounter in your daily life. But, oftentimes we learn things through our own voluntary efforts. And this is what operant conditioning is all about. So I'm going to pause this recording for a moment. And before I go on, I want you to check out some of these animal tricks in a video in eCampus called Animal Tricks. So watch some of those and think about how these animals learned to do these things. And then come back to this video. Okay, so after watching that video of those animals performing tricks, how do you think they learned those things? So classical conditioning can't really explain how it is that the dog was able to take a bottle of beer to its owner. So how do you suppose that the dog learned how to do this? How do you think she was trained? So this is where operant conditioning comes into play. So operant, or sometimes called instrumental conditioning, is when organisms learn from the consequences of their behavior. So with classical conditioning, our responses are involuntary, right? So we salivate in response to food, or we startle in response to a loud noise, or we shriek in pain in response to hot water. So these are all involuntary, and the associations we learn are also involuntary. But our behavior isn't simply just a response to different stimuli that we are exposed to all day. Much of it is voluntary and on purpose. So throughout our lives, we experience many things as we encounter the world, and we learn that certain behaviors have certain consequences, and we alter our behavior based on those consequences. And then in this case, learning takes place. So we learn by engaging with our environment. So as we move through our world, we try a bunch of different behaviors, and then the ones that are rewarded, that have positive consequences, are reinforced, and then those behaviors get repeated. So these are the principles of operant conditioning. So if we behave in some way, then that behavior is rewarded, that behavior will be increased. And if we behave in some way and then we receive some sort of punishment, that behavior will decrease. And so in this way, our behavior is really shaped by the environment. It's shaped by the consequences that we experience. So we're constantly exploring our environment and trying new things. So operant conditioning is the process by which certain behaviors are reinforced. And so behavior is molded by the environment. Okay, so I'm going to pause this video, and we're getting close to the end, so this will be the end of this recording. And so to get a really good example of operant conditioning, I want you to click on the link that says operant conditioning, and then when we're done, come back to the next recording, which I believe will be learning number 4.